Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. With me on the show this week is Magda Kay. She is an intimacy expert. She's a personal coach. She was also in a sex cult for 4 years. It's a first here on Sex Party. What was it like to be on a remote island in a sex cult for 4 years? Surprisingly, she talks about how not everything was bad and terrible, and what she has taken, what she's learned from this sex cult, how this cult came to an end. We also talk about her work as an intimacy expert, what is blocking most of us from achieving high levels of intimacy. We talk about Tantra, orgasm. This is a doozy episode. You guys are going to love it. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Magda Kay.
This week's conversation.
Magda Kay, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm doing very well today. I mean, taking part in Sex Party, who wouldn't?
Yeah. A sex party at any time is usually pretty great. This one, I can only speak for this one because I'm in charge of this one. I'm hosting this one. So yeah, I mean, come on, right? Well, welcome to the show. This has been a little bit of time in the works. We worked it out. You're here. There was some emailing back and forth as we do in the podcast world. So I just want the audience to know how much time and effort we put into this. I want you guys to know how hard it was. Yes, we're doing this for you. So speaking of the audience and the people in it, they're listening, they're watching, they're waiting with bated breath. They're excited. They could be drinking tea, coffee, probably vodka if I know my audience, right? Hopefully not while driving. If you're driving, just pull over. They've never heard your name. They've never seen your face, right? Could you talk a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yes. So my name is Magda Kay, and it's funny you mentioned vodka because I'm Polish, so you're going to hear a bit of the accent, even though in my reality, I speak like a Native American, which just apparently isn't true. But again, what I hear in my head is different. So, you mentioned vodka. It's like, national drink for us.
Yeah, I love vodka.
So I am an intimacy expert, and I work with couples and singles, men and women, and my expertise lies in Tantra and sacred sexuality. But, I lived in a tantric community. I'm sure we're going to get into this, which practically speaking was a sex cult. So I've done it all. But also these communities, they're full of dogma and, not always respect boundaries. And so I stepped away from this community and kind of back into the Western world. And what I do is I translate or adapt these teachings from the East, from India, Bali, Thailand, for people from, the West who are still living, a fast-paced life. And they don't necessarily want to, move to an island for 3 years to practice yoga every day to have a deeper orgasm, but they like their lifestyle. So I basically adapt these teachings for people so everyone can benefit from those teachings. Because definitely something I've experienced is that, when you have a traditional Western lifestyle, we're very contracted and we really struggle to fully open and be intimate. So I feel we have a lot of need for those teachings. It's just that I will tell you personally, I think a lot of Tantra teachers are extremely woohoo. They're even too much for me. And I've lived through that, So yes, and I love bringing in psychology. So just kind of merging these two worlds so people can have better relationships, and intimate life.
Wow. Okay. A lot there, obviously, but since I'm a podcaster and also too, I've never had someone who's been in a sex cult on the show, and I've always wanted to. So let's talk about the sex cult, okay? Because it sounds like what you just said was I was pretty much in a sex cult, but it wasn't all bad, but I had to leave, right? So, and now I've taken some teachings from the sex cult and I'm reworking them to be healthy practices. So tell me about the sex cult.
So let me start like a few steps before that.
Sure.
So I was looking for sexual healing, and we're talking like over a decade ago. I wasn't orgasmic. I lost the relationship because of this. And there was a lot of healing that I needed to do, like a lot of old traumas and pain that was really controlling me. I struggled to open up, to be intimate. And so I wanted to go into healing. I heard a few things like sexual healing. I heard things like a yoni massage, which probably you guys don't know, but a yoni massage is basically a therapeutical massage inside of the vagina. So like I heard these things and I'm like, oh, what is that? But at the same time, I'm curious. I want to go through this because I was at the point when I was like, I'm all in, whatever it takes. I need to go through whatever it takes so I can finally open my body. And so I wanted to find Tantra, but now these days, if you go online and you put Tantra, you're going to find so much, like courses, YouTube channels, tons of Instagram accounts. But that wasn't the case a decade ago. So it's a bit like, you were saying that it took some work for us to be able to meet. Well, that's literally the case back then. Like it really took a lot of work, asking, searching, finally finding the right person. And so I ended up in this community in Thailand, and I had heard about this, and it was like, oh, teachers sleep with students in that school. They do these yoni massages and lingam massages. So a yoni is for a woman, a lingam massage is for a man. And I'm just like, what is this place? Like first I was just like outraged, what do you mean? That's horrible. I cannot believe anyone would be doing this. And then it took me about like 3 years to be like, I want to try this. And so I finally met one person, then another, and eventually I met someone from that community. And so I basically flew with her to Thailand, to this small island, and enrolled in the school and started doing the practices. So that community, it wasn't really big. We're talking maybe like 100, 200 people, no more than 300, just kind of come in and out of the island. And it was a spiritual community, right? So we were doing a lot of yoga every day, few hours of practice, your yoga on your mat, meditation, breath work, like a lot of intense practices to prepare your body for these deeper experiences. And then at the same time, the things that were happening was the whole community was polyamorous. We were organizing, well, we call those temple nights, which is basically a tantric sex party. So it's not like your maybe typical sex party. There's no alcohol. There's a lot of like at the beginning workshops to get you in the mood. It's not a fuck fest. It's meant to be like an uplifted experience. But, so the community had those. We had different rituals. Like, I took part in different group rituals. There's like this guy's birthday ritual and his wife invited 4 women to join. So things like this would happen normally, just like normally. I get a message like, hey, listen, it's my boyfriend's birthday. We'd like to have a threesome with you. Just like, it was just so normal for things like this to happen. And I definitely love that. I love being in this community because I open up a lot. And I did have some incredibly energy and spiritual experiences engaging in tantric sex and really opened my body and my heart. But when I stepped out of this community, it was a bit of like, I think sometimes when you're in something, like even in a relationship, you just don't see it clearly, right? You have to step out to understand what it was. And I started like talking to people about this community, and I'm like, wait, this really was a sex cult. As in like we were told to have sex. Like that was, and here's the thing. Yes, tantric sex is a spiritual practice and it can offer profound healing because it moves a lot of energy. So in a way, everything they're saying is true. I'm not against it. But the reality is that, yes, we were told, like I was told multiple times, get more lovers. It's like, if you want to move this and shift it, have more tantric sex, like have this type of sex. It's like sex was tantric sex was really promoted. You were encouraged. Like, people were not encouraged to be monogamous. We were meant to have multiple lovers. Now, some people took a vow of celibacy for a while to practice different like things in their body. But again, it's like, it was all around sex, really. And I will say that, especially again, stepping out of this community, I'm like, yeah, there was some pushing. I haven't experienced any form of abuse. I was okay. But eventually the school is practically gone now because of the accusations of rape and abuse. So not everything was right. Like, you know, the main teacher, our guru, was a man. And I find that you need women, you know, to manage communities like this as well, just because sex is such a different experience for men and women. So yes, it's like you said, I got so much from this community, and I met incredible men who guided me in the most just delicious way to open up and heal. But at the same time, yes, I did realize that it was promoting like sex a bit too much, too fast. And it wasn't, especially towards women, it wasn't telling us, hey, check in with yourself. Is it really like align with you? Does it honor your needs and boundaries? Like there was no conversation about that. It was just go and have more lovers. So that's definitely the part that just stopped resonating with me.
Yeah. Okay. So a few questions. One, how long were you in this cult? How long were you there?
So I was on the island. I'm so bad at this. I think around 4 years. And 1 year I was like actually going to school for classes, like a year and a half. I was actually re-attending the classes. So very, very much involved. Then I stepped out of the school, but I was in the community for like 3 years, something like this. And then in my 3rd year on the island, that's when the school got accused and it sort of shut down. And it's not even close to what it used to be. So basically while I was there, it was like the end of this community. It kind of dissolved. Okay.
And so was this an island away from mainland, or was this?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And
we call it the Tantra Island.
Okay. So Tantra Island, right? How many people were a part of this cult, this group, would you say?
So, you know, it's, I think I'm so bad at estimating, so I may be totally like off here, but I want to say around between, I think 100 and 200 at a given time. But there are like, because, you know, this community existed for like a decade, or even more than a decade. So there's a lot of people who would come like one season and then they wouldn't come for 2 years and they would come back. So there's a lot of like back and forth for people.
Yeah.
So the whole community, if you think of all the people who have ever been like involved with this, maybe around 500 even, you know, but like on the island specifically, I say like maybe 100 to 200 people, I think.
Okay. And couples obviously were part of that.
Yes, a lot of couples.
Was there more women than men, or?
I don't remember there being any significant imbalance, you know.
Sure.
It's like it seemed like we're pretty much even.
Yeah, okay. But the instructors or the teachers or the leaders were primarily all men, or they were all men, or there's no women involved?
So the main person was a man, and then the main teachers were also men, and there were a few women, but they were not at the same position. So it was definitely a very male driven community. Yeah, for sure.
And the top guy, like, did everyone have, like, was everyone manipulated or pressured or have to sleep with like the top guy? Did like,
no, you didn't have to, for sure. You didn't have to. And not everyone did, but, it was a bit like, if I think from my perspective, so people who came to this community, for women especially, women had some healing to do. They were blocked. And so I really got to meet incredible men, and through engaging in tantric sex with them, I really experienced healing. So I'm very grateful for those experiences. Like, I have to be honest, like comparing that type of lovemaking to what I had before, it's like, you know, just two different experiences totally.
Right, yeah.
And so, of course, if you think about it, it's like, you know, the more powerful tantric practitioner, the deeper the experience. So I've been with men who are only kind of beginning this path, and men who have been doing this for years, and there is a difference. Like the practice is much stronger. Also, men in this community, they practice brahmacharya, which is non-ejaculation. And so to be able really to be a master of that and be able to retain semen, like you have to practice, you have to be really strong. And so, of course, the teachers were like the most powerful practitioners. Like their energy was much stronger than other students. They were very good at the practice of non-ejaculation. And so, of course, they were able to offer you something then, you know, just like normal people in the community would not. So, of course, a lot of women wanted to be with the top teachers because of that, because in a way, like you had to experience, through that, you get to experience really powerful energy, like really what it is when a man can control his sexual energy.
Okay. And so, so was there never ejaculation, or was it just like a practice that people wanted to, that was like a power practice that people wanted to teach and learn and whatever. But if you're enjoying yourself and it's been an hour or 2 hours or 8 hours or whatever, 20 minutes, and you're like, was it something that, because I do think I totally get it when you can sort of pull back, but yet still like extend the orgasm or that sensation or that feeling. And we've had people on the show that talk and teach that. And I think that is very fascinating. And a lot of people could probably benefit from that. But to think like there's 200 people on an island having sex in a cult and no one's ejaculating seems kind of odd to me.
Okay, so I feel like maybe I'm gonna like let me introduce you a little bit to the whole concept why we do this.
Absolutely.
So I think non-ejaculation has become extremely popular these days, but it's a bit like a buzzword. And very often when you take a concept and then it becomes super popular, it gets modified and it misses the point. So non-ejaculation is not about what we call forceful retention. It's not that you're forcefully keeping it in and then you get blue balls. One of the benefits of this practice is that you can last longer, or in fact, as long as you want. But this is not the main reason why this would be practiced in this community. So there is such a thing as edging. Right. So when you come close, you kind of pause, you allow the energy to drop a little bit, calm down, and then you go again, and you can do it a few times, which allows you to extend your lovemaking. And then when you do come, it's a more powerful orgasm for men. So that can be part of the non-ejaculation practice. But why we were doing this in this community was a bit different. So the whole point comes from, like, everything in this community is about energy, right? We're doing energy practices. We work with sexual energy. This is what sexual tantra is about. It's about working with sexual energy. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why men would not ejaculate was to conserve their life force energy. So this comes down to the concept that after a man ejaculate, you feel tired, you may need to rest, especially with age, like you can really feel it in your body. So when you learn to not ejaculate, you keep the energy in, and so you don't have those drops of energy afterwards. So that's like the main reason. Now, the second reason is what you can do with this energy. And so once you know how to keep the energy in, then you can move it through your body, and you can experience, as a man, multiple and full body orgasm. Like, these are energy orgasms. So it's a different experience. So there were some men who were very religious about this practice, and they would not ejaculate for years. And again, remember that when they do it correctly, you don't have you're not left with pressure. It's like, oh, I need to ejaculate. Like, you're not left with that because you dissolve the pressure. This is the correct way to do it. Mm-hmm. Again, no one is left with blue balls, right? So they would do it for many, many years. But again, like I said, there was dogma in this community, and there's a lot of dogma in conscious, spiritual communities. And some of the top teachers, they would call it an accident. So if he comes, he would consider this an accident, something bad, and he would do breath practices for a full day to try to recover. So there was a bit of an obsession with that. But so this would be the top teachers, top practitioners in the community. More like average men, they would still allow themselves occasionally to come. But to be fair, I teach these practices to men. I teach sexual mastery. I will tell you that I think it's a beautiful thing for a man to master. You don't have to use it every single time, but you can, if you learn how to feel your energy, then circulate it through your body, you can still choose to come, but that energy has moved through you. So you can have these deeper experiences, full body experiences, and still kind of come at the end. And honestly, and here I cannot really speak for myself because that's more of a men's thing, but you can probably relate to the feeling of developing mastery, like being a master of something in life. It's almost like it defines being a man. And so there's no higher mastery than self-mastery. And among self-mastery, sexual mastery is really the most difficult. So a lot of when I hear from my clients, a lot of them look at it as like, this is a challenge for me. I want to it's a challenge. I want to forge myself basically to become a true man. It's like, I want to be in control of my desires, my cravings and urges. So I think just even trying these practices for that reason, I think it can be a really interesting experience for men. But yes, basically that's, and think about it. If you do it correctly, there's no threat of getting pregnant. So it can also be very practical.
Yeah. Well, it is very interesting. And I think it's something, and if it were me, it would be something where I would pick and choose when I would not ejaculate, because to me personally, I love, I love having an orgasm and ejaculating, but then there's also like fun, like kind of like sexual things you can do with that. And especially if you have a partner that's like into your ejaculation and like all of that. And there's different things, in different ways and different places you can ejaculate with someone, on someone, in someone, and whatever. And so for me personally, if I'm a man thinking about that, I would say, oh, I get it. The energy, and maybe I would practice that more with like a masturbation technique where I'm like, learning it that way. So open-minded and great, sure, but I could never imagine doing that for a lifetime or something like that. But I think it's fascinating, and I respect that concept and that idea of then flushing the energy, channeling it throughout your body, which I think is really, really awesome and fascinating. And we will get to that. So okay, before I ask this next question, we're going to slip in a question between the questions. I mean, what were some of your most profound experiences on this island in this cult? I think, like what were like the 2 or 3 things that you just kind of blew your mind or opened you up or scared you, or what were the more profound? I mean, 4 years is a long time to be on a remote island, getting messages that, it's Roger's birthday. Would you mind coming over to the hut and having a threesome with us or whatever? Like, tell us some stories.
So I think this one probably, when it was this guy's birthday, and then like it's 4 women or 5 women and him, that was very interesting because it was my first time having more people. So before I had a threesome, I had like a group experience. So I do really cherish that experience. I think it was beautiful. Also, like, seeing other women and engaging with women. I really do value my experience attending sex parties. I organized a few myself as well. I realized how much I actually enjoy these spaces. And like with every single party, I was engaging less and less. But the thing is, like, I don't even need to, I don't have right now, like, I don't have a lot of desire to be active in those spaces, but I really enjoy being in the energy of a space like this. So I think that this is an experience I really value, that I have this, because again, I think most people don't. Or if I just visited once this sex club in Warsaw, and it was just, it was so gross. Seriously. It was just like, oh my gosh. So I do value this a lot. But then I also had sexual healing experiences. And this happened mostly during a yoni massage, which means someone was massaging first your full body and then inside of the vagina, but with the intention of healing. And I had some incredibly deep releases. Like the most intense yoni massage that I had was about 4 hours long. And like, I was screaming, I was crying, I was kicking the guy who was giving me this massage, but it was just like so much got released, because we have all of these old stories and memories and emotions stuck in the body. And unless you shake it and break, like, you literally have to break for those things to be able to come up. And so there's so much space for this. And like, these were incredible experiences. And through all of that, I got to the point where I became very, very sensitive to energy. I could feel it so easily. And for me specifically, so I don't want to get too woo-hoo here, but we all have our connection to different element in nature. So I don't know if you ever notice whether you like love the mountains or if you love the ocean, but we'll have natural resonance because we have different energy types. So my type goes to the earth and the rocks. And especially if it's rocks by the waterfall, like there's just something about this that I don't know. I'm so moved. I cry. It's like, I just feel them. And so I would very easily be in nature and just sit on the rocks. And I could so deeply connect to the rocks that I would activate my energy and I would go into these orgasmic waves. It's not the same as an orgasm, you know, when you have sex with someone. It's more like, again, it's more like energy experience, but like the body would shake because like the energy moves you. And so I would be able to get into those states without anyone or doing really anything because I was so open. And I had also a few really deep spiritual experiences as well through tantric sex. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but like I had my Kundalini awakening also after being with a partner. So there's a lot of kind of like things that, you know, it's like we kind of consider them like supernatural almost, like that were happening because of all of these practices. Yes. So there's been a lot.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, I want to say that I love that you can say things such as you connected with the rocks and had orgasmic waves. And then you can also respect this sort of, you could also say something before that that's I'm not going to get too woo woo here. This is not going to get too woo because you are sort of respecting that. And I think what's cool about you so far, not even at the halfway mark of the show, is that you sort of do walk in both a realistic field and a spiritual, scientific almost way of sex and intimacy and whatever. So I love that because you're right. Some people are too, nuts and bolts and this is how it is and da da da. And then if you go the other way on the other side of the spectrum, it is like, and then I was part of the tree and like, and then both things are cool and I have respect for that. But I love that you sort of speak in both ways.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so you never had any like crazy weird experiences where someone was like trying to come. Well, I mean, maybe you did, but.
Well, I mean, we had this kind of, there was this joke that, like the most common pickup line, right? So the pickup line in our community was, hey, do you want to practice Tantra?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, look, so I personally haven't had like bad experiences, but also I was very, very clear why I was in that community. I was there for sex, literally. It's like, that's why I went there. So I wasn't shocked. I was shocked a few years before when I first heard about these things. I was shocked then. And then I had my 3 years or so to get used to some of the ideas. And once I got into the community, I knew exactly what I wanted and why I am there. But absolutely, like, I think there's this one time when I got kind of shocked that this one guy, so I was like eating in a little like restaurant and this guy, so it's a small island. We all, moved on scooters and like you drive around and you're always going to bump into someone. So I'm in the restaurant having food and this guy drives. And he sees me and he stops. I just kind of remember seeing him around. Don't think we ever talked. So he joins me. I'm like, okay, fine. This would be normal in the community. And then he says, what do you want to do? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go for a massage now. And he says like, oh, I can offer you a massage too. And I said like, okay, maybe I'll take you up on this offer one day. And that's it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then later and like maybe the next day I was posting something about sex parties, whatever. And then he messages me and he says, oh, so you organize sex parties, but you reject a massage offer. And I was like, what? I'm like, oh my God. First of all, I didn't even reject you, right? It's like, I was like, oh, thank you. But I may do this one day, right? But secondly, I'm thinking like, well, yeah, the reason why I can attend a sex party is because I can say no. So the fact that he was like, blaming me for the fact that I said no to him, I found it so I was like, what the heck? So smaller things like this would happen. But I think I felt confident enough in myself, to be able to deal with those situations. Yeah. Like there was actually, again, my very first sex party. I ended up with like in a threesome with these two guys, too fast. And that's the point. And after I was like, yeah, that happened too fast. It didn't feel perfectly good, but I didn't feel in any way like my boundaries were crossed. It was just like, yeah, I would have preferred slowing it down. Okay, lesson learned, right? For next time. But I personally haven't really had like bad experience. I actually have a pretty good, like for me, it was a pretty good time. I have to be honest.
Yeah. And so you decided to go and you were 18 when you went?
No. I was way older.
Okay. I was going to say,
I'm older than you think, I guess. I'm 38 now. So I ended up in the community. Oh my, see, I'm so confused, but it would have been, because I thought it would be 7 years ago, but it must have been more like almost 10 years ago that I got into the community.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make sure they didn't erase your memory or something. Well, you know, cult leader.
It's a cult, yes.
Yeah. They're good at that.
It was all perfect.
Yeah. Well, so far, so okay, did the head guy, did he get in trouble and like, or did you
Yeah.
So did he disappear? Was he arrested? And what happened?
I think, to be fair, at some point, like they were looking into the school and they wanted to close it, but by then I was quite out of it, and I didn't really want to like engage with the school. I wasn't following the details. I mean, the school is still open. The community doesn't exist really anymore. Most of the people have left the island, and they just didn't want to go back after the whole thing happened. I think the biggest thing that's kind of sad to see is that a lot of like teachers and a lot of people who are part of this community, once all the allegations kind of came up, they really looked at it honestly, and they're like, wow, I'm sorry. Like I got messages from men, and I know a lot of men send messages to women in the community saying, listen, if I ever crossed your boundaries, I'm sorry. And like they had some, moment of awareness, but the top teachers never did. And I think that was a bit sad.
Yeah.
To be fair, I heard that the police recommended them not to say anything because then it would sound like you're admitting. So look, I mean, I can understand that people, try to stay out of the prison, right? So I think that's human. We all would do whatever we can. But it was something I was really missing, that I don't know if all the accusations are true or not. Like, I cannot speak for that because that wasn't my experience. But I feel it is true that there was certain like level of abuse of power, and some pressure being put on people, especially the women. And so I feel like having a bit more consideration would be nice. And they just showed none of this. And this is when I was like, yeah, I'm done. I got a lot, but I'm done. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. And I'm glad that you got out and everything is lovely and you can speak on it in somewhat, I mean, you said a lot of positive things about being in a call. Hey, maybe if the podcast doesn't work for me, I'll start a sex call. Then it'll be a positive sex call or whatever. No, I'm just kidding. Or am I? I joke with my girlfriend about it all the time, and we just like crack up about it. But like, most called experiences are not as great as yours, and so I'm just glad that you.
But can I add something?
Sure.
Because I think we also maybe need to expand a little bit the definition of a cult.
Of course.
Because if you think all the tribes that work, they have like traits of a cult. So we do have positive cults. We just don't call them cults. We call them tribes.
Sure.
But if as all the sports teams, it's a cult. It's an absolute cult.
Totally.
So the thing is, what makes something a cult is that you have common beliefs and you're very tight inside of your group. And so in a way, that's what I'm saying, like it's not that it's going to be negative per se. It's just, what are those values, right? And you have to remember that it's very easy to lose your sense of identity. This is what actually makes cults dangerous, because you lose your own sense of identity. You kind of forget what your beliefs are and what your boundaries are. And there's like this idea that's being put on everyone, like this is who you are, right? Like in our case, it was like, we are polyamorous. And then once the community kind of dissolved, a lot of people went into monogamous relationships because you realize, I actually never wanted that.
Yeah.
So I think this is why they're dangerous, because, you can lose yourself. So for me, I went into the community knowing who I am, at least in that area. So I think this is why I didn't come out traumatized, but I know other people did. They went there for healing. So they were searching for themselves. And so in this case, you can easily become a victim.
Yeah. I mean, when people hear the word sex cult, it's always going to be a negative, no matter what, it's going to be a negative.
I think so. Yeah. Yes.
But you're right. In the dangerous ones, they do try to dissolve your individuality, your identity rather quickly in order to sort of put you in this group, which then they can pick and choose and do whatever it is that they want with you, because you don't have this identity anymore. And that's sort of the manipulation that, a fucking cult leader would have. And so I'm glad that you expounded on it a little bit more, because I think, yeah, fuck yeah, like any sports team, y'all are a cult. I mean, a lot of political movements lately are cults. I won't say which ones, but there's people can watch the news. And so yeah, and that's that's tricky. And so that's where we're going to leave that with the cults. But but it is very interesting that you came out of that with some really tremendous, because you do watch Netflix documentaries about cults and people are like, hey, I was in it and it was crazy and this bad thing happened at the end, but I pulled some great shit out of it. And so here you are, an intimacy expert. I mean,
people love scandals. You have to remember this. Like, I've seen a few documentaries, even like with my community, there was this one woman specifically who loved finding like dirt on different spiritual teachers. And the thing is, they approached me.
Yeah.
They asked me, hey, Magda, because we know you're engaged with these teachers, can you share your story? And I was like, I don't have a story of being abused. That is not true. I could bend it to make it sound like that,
sure,
but that's not what happened to me. And like there's a really good documentary about Osho community on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
And so I watched and I was like, what the fuck? But I know people who lived in that community. And the thing is, when you, like, if you have a specific goal for your documentary, of course you have to make it scandalous and like, people need to feel emotions, but it's hardly ever just that,
Yeah.
It's hardly ever just that, because those communities, they've offered a lot of healing to a lot of people as well.
Yeah. I mean, I watched the Osho documentary on Netflix. I was like, first of all, I was like so intrigued I couldn't turn it off. And number two, I was like, holy hell, that's crazy. But I say all that, right? And for Christmas, I bought my girlfriend the Osho Tantra manual or whatever, and it's on our coffee table thingy out in the whatever, so. And
it's great. Like, his teachings and his practices are really amazing. Yeah. Yes. And so, but I think it's really interesting because, we love looking at things in a black and white, right? It's like, it's either good or bad. It's just the tendency of our mind. But the thing is that life hardly ever works like this. Hardly anything is purely bad or purely good.
Yeah.
And I think I even remember when I was like watching about Osho, because like, again, I love his teachings, but oh my God, here I see these things. And he's not the only teacher. Bikram was attacked. There's a few other, I think Yogi Bhajan at some point as well. So all of these different like paths of yoga and spirituality, like suddenly there are all of these accusations. And I think it's interesting because it's like, okay, can I separate the teachings from the shit that was happening there? And can I recognize that there's both good and bad? And what, for me, for example, one of the big lessons was I am my own authority. I cannot be giving away my power to any teacher. Like, my authority is within me, because essentially it's about my safety. And I think this is such an important conversation in intimacy and sex, because we as humans, we love giving away power. Whether it's the government, it's a doctor, it's my father, my boyfriend, my friend, or even in my world, it's, an astrology reader, a coach, oracle cards, which I all love. But we're like, I'm going to have someone else tell me what I should do. And that's just dangerous, And I think especially with sex for women, because it can cause a lot of trauma, like, we just have to own it. It's like, it's my responsibility. So for me, that was one of the main lessons I was taking from seeing exactly like, oh my God, what are those communities doing?
Yeah. I had someone on the show and it hasn't aired yet. I haven't dropped the episode yet, but we get into she was talking about somehow Andrew Tate came up, and obviously he's a ding dong and whatever, but she actually said, Yeah, I think he is a ding dong because he, like you said, because he has done these kind of grimy, like shitty things. But that being said, what I've seen from some of the things he says, he does have some good points. And I was like, holy shit, that's controversial. But, you know, I mean, that's up to the individual, right? And I don't jive with Andrew Tate. It's not my thing, but I'm not going to tell someone, you know, oh, you can't, everything he says there is a gray area for everything, whether it's sex, like you said, or spirituality, or you know, politics. I mean, whatever. It's there's this, to be human is to be in the gray area, I think. And I think when you talk about intimacy, you know, and in your field of expertise, right, there's a lot of gray area in intimacy. And I think that word alone means something to someone that maybe doesn't mean the same to someone else. And then we combine intimacy and sex. And so it can get very gray very quickly. And none of us really want to embrace that. Like you said, it's just like we want yes or no, red or green, black or white. And so maybe you could talk about not only what you do as an intimacy expert, but how do you make that really sort of intimacy, not argument, but intimacy sort of play, work for your clients and work for, like, when you're putting out content and you're speaking about intimacy, how do you make sure that when you're saying that word, that it sort of translates to everyone's certain little gray area beliefs?
Well, I'll be super honest. It doesn't. That's kind of that's always funny. I mean, I'm sure you know this. You create, you know, a piece of content, and then some people love it and some people hate it. And it's actually it's incredible. When you read the comments, you're just like, did you actually watch the video? I never said that.
They never, Magda, they never watch the video. They just go right to fuck you. This is wrong. Yeah.
See, because I remember one of the comments I got, that's like a long time ago. It was like, oh, I wouldn't even fuck you because you're too annoying. See, at least someone wanted to fuck you. I wasn't even fuckable. No, but I'll tell you honestly, I think, I always try, but I am aware that people always look at everything through the lens of their own perception, their past, their fears, their expectations. And so there's no way that I can, especially when it comes to content from me to multiple people, there's no way it's going to land the right way. This is what I can do when I work with clients one-on-one. And this is why I love one-on-one work, because this way it's exactly what you said. I can adjust how I speak to you, what we talk about, and what kind of tools I give you so that it reflects, or in fact honors your understanding of intimacy, both like what you already know and where maybe you picked some negative beliefs or some, you know, like, I don't want to say lies, but something that's maybe not necessarily true. Yes, but when it comes to like people misunderstanding the word intimacy, it's massive. I very often, like, people assume I'm a sex worker, like the amount of messages that I get, and I'm just like, oh, come on. It's just like, even today, you know, I sent an email, which is about why I started using the word pussy. And like, for me, it's been a big journey because, you know, all the names for the genitals, they're basically bad words and swear words. And I was very already open sexually, but I wasn't using the words like pussy, cunt, etc. I was using the word yoni from Tantra. And I realized that, oh, I still feel uncomfortable about this. So I wanted to reclaim this word. And so I sent an email, right? And this guy responds and he was like, oh, can you record a video where you just say pussy for like 10 minutes? Just pussy, 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 because it's so sexy when you say it. And I'm thinking, no, I can't, but I can block you.
Yeah. Nice job, guy. Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, like, you know, this is a thing that comes up all the time in my relationship. We talk about, you know, what's happening on social media because we're at work. We're both, you know, doing the social media for our different projects. And I just got into it with some fucking idiot this morning where he's like, actually, you know what? It was a woman, and she said there was someone who came out and said they were sexually harassed, and this particular person who was sexually harassed had an OnlyFans account, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can't have an OnlyFans and then complain about sexual harassment." I was like, "Hey, you do realize they're two different things, right?" And then it started, and so somebody was in there and was saying like, "No, she's asking for it." I'm like, "Wow, is this 1980?" in a corporate building in New York City? Like what are we're done with that. Like whatever. And so, yeah, somebody is going to message you when you use the word pussy. And it's so frustrating because who raised that person? And like, did they just feed them just cottage cheese and corn and just like told them to be an asshole or what? Like, what the fuck is this? Why would people think that if someone's a sex worker, they're allowed to touch them at a concert? Because we've had that we talked about that on the show, that happened to somebody very prominent. And so this idea of you saying pussy or someone doing sex work or talking about tantra or being a sex therapist, that allows usually a dude to say something and do something terrible.
Look, to be fair, I think this is where I think our world is really fucked up. So sexuality is wrong, but being sexy is okay. As in like, no, you cannot be having sex, but let's over-sexualize everything. It's like, what the heck is wrong with our society? And so because of that, there's so many conversations we're not having. And when we don't talk about something, then it builds shame. And when we shame ourselves or other people, this is when we become really cruel and very toxic and dangerous. So even if you think of, just so we don't get canceled, so I'm not going to use certain phrases, but let's say if you think of different sexual behaviors that are considered illegal.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The thing is that if a person had space to talk about this, the fact that they fantasize about doing something that's just in their mind is horrible, right? If they had space to talk about this with a coach or someone, a sex therapist, they would be able to understand where this comes from, because a lot of our sexual fantasies, especially like those that seem very inappropriate or illegal, it's a form of actually coping with something. It's a form of like how the psyche is dealing with something, right? And so here we would be able to actually guide someone through it, help you understand what it means. And then those people would never act it out.
Sure.
But because we don't talk about so many things, then behaviors like this happen. And, a woman who's shaming, who was shaming that victim, this woman is sexually suppressed, right? And it's so obvious. You're projecting because you're not allowing yourself to be sexual. And it's horrible because, I do believe that we also, we have a lot of promiscuity, which again, it's not always on a sexual liberation. It's often again, acting out some wounding that should also be looked at. But like, if you see a woman who's okay with her sexuality, and even if she has this OnlyFans account because she hasn't dealt with some issues, like even if that's the reason for it, still like thinking that is like the reason to ask for being harassed or disrespected, it's like, it just shows how much that woman is controlling her own sexuality, is how much she's not okay with her own sexuality. And so as long as society, like our society keeps telling you sexuality is wrong, so people act out. That's it. And like, I don't know, for me, you know what, I'll tell you this, I cannot absolutely understand why movies like Saw are freaking in the movie theater, and that is okay. That is okay. But an erotic movie or a porn movie cannot? Like seriously? Like torturing someone, it's okay? And sex is not okay? Not even like light erotica is not okay? Like what the heck is wrong with us?
Yeah. And I think, that's been a point that's been made for so long. And I don't, it's difficult because your body naturally has the ability, or at least most of our bodies, right, has this ability to have an orgasm, be sexually attracted to someone, whatever. Not all of us are like, man, I want to find a young college girl, tie her up, and torture her. Like, so why are we accepting this other outside thing? And I hate censorship of any kind, right? I'm against all of that. But what I don't understand is when people rally against censorship, they never rally against sexual censorship. The things that Meta and TikTok, and I mean I could go on, but they're like the new church in the way that they built their platforms off of sex, right? And then they crack down on everybody. And now, and I'm sure you've gone through it with Instagram, like they ban, they destroy, they take down content, they demonetize, and it just doesn't make any. You can make your profile 18 plus, and they're still gonna come for you, right? But you can post a video of somebody beheading someone or some doofus like riding his dirt bike off some hill that then hits some stairs and then into a chainsaw, wood chipper, whatever, and that's allowed, right? But it doesn't make any sense. It's almost as if society is like, hey, be mad at everybody, and bloody murder is probably okay. We didn't say it, but we're whatever. But whatever you do, don't think about having anal, because then the whole world will go to shit. Yeah. So I agree. I agree with you. I mean, how are you fighting those things, like in your work, in your social media posting?
I think, of course, I've been like, I've experienced some form of censorship and blocking in most places. But I think the weirdest one that I've had was with my email software provider. And I used their name because I think what they did was ridiculous. So I used to use this company called Get Response, and it's a Polish company. I was really happy with them. And then one day I tried to log into my account and I can't. And it says that my account has been deactivated. I was like, what? And I'm like, no email, nothing before letting me know anything. I'm like, what do you mean deactivated? So I emailed them, and here's the response that I get. Like, because I like, what's wrong and everything. They said, because your content may arouse someone. And all I'm thinking is like, hey, people get aroused by a lot of weird things. Like, this is not up to me. I'm like, oh my God. And so they didn't let me back in. And I was angry. And then I set up a different account with a different company. But again, now I'm happy with them. But the beginnings was like this. So I was looking at other people in my industry who talk about sex. I was subscribing to their email. And then when you unsubscribe, you can see what provider they're using. So that's what I was doing to find like, what is the company these people use. And I found this one lady, and she like talks penises, cocks, everything. Like, she's very like purely sexual coaching and advice. And I found the company that she's using. So I was like, okay, well, let me try, using them. And I was like in the middle of launching something. So I set up a quick account, but I messaged them, right? I say, hey, listen, this is what happened. I don't want to cross I don't want to break any of your rules. Can you let me know how it works for you, right? And in response, they blocked me. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm asking you, right? But again, then I emailed them back, say, hey, you have this woman and this person, so why are you not allowing me? And then we had back and forth, and they allowed me, and I'm on the platform. But it's just like, it's ridiculous that, what I'm trying to do, same with you, is spread healthy sexuality. We're not calling people to do some crazy unhealthy things. And it's like, and that is getting blocked and censored. Like, really? We want people to be healthy. Like in like everything I do with my work is that so rape doesn't happen, so that abuse doesn't happen, so that we don't have a lot of divorce, so that no one beats anyone else in the relationship, right? And I'm like, and you think that needs to be censored and that needs to be blocked? So it's just sad. I'll say this. But I'm also happy to see how many people are doing podcasts and Twitter, Instagram, whatever, like speaking in some way about this. I feel like we're building the momentum. We're becoming like this force that, once it gets so big, you can't be censoring us because we'll find ways to talk about it.
Yeah, don't fuck with us, please. Just fucking go away, you fuckers. Well, I mean that, and and here you are trying to spread this message about intimacy, whatever that looks like. to as many people as possible, and they're raining down hellfire on you because of it, and they're letting all the other shit go, and that's just that is unacceptable in my book. And I think I don't know why or how we're anyone's tolerating it, but I think hopefully you're right. Like we will the ball will keep rolling and we'll keep pushing. And I do want to talk to you about your work, right? And I do want to talk to you about like your day to day, the stuff that you're doing. First of all, do you work with more men or more women, or is it a mix? Or
I do work. Usually, most of my clients, most of my followers are men, then couples, then women. I'll say I definitely have a lot of ease working with men. I think it's because you have a woman who talks about sexuality openly. And I've seen that this is very refreshing for a man, that men can open up and speak about it to a woman. So that's definitely always been a big chunk of my clients. But recently, I'm working a lot with clients, which I actually really love. I don't know, anytime, like I'm single now, and anytime I see a couple, all I see is like, wow, here I have two people who are so lucky to have found each other, and they really want to make it work. And like, I cheer for my couples so much from the bottom of my heart, really.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you see pure potential when two people come to you, and then you want to take that potential and hey, and I feel like that, what could be greater than that, to be able to give somebody something, then you feel accomplished, they feel better, they're having more intimacy, more sex. I mean, what are the biggest problems today that you are getting hit with your clients? Like they're coming to you, they're saying what?
So I'll be honest with you. I think this is like some of my best moments at work. I literally have saved a couple of couples from getting a divorce. So, I mean, I'm sure all of us can relate, right? After being together for a while, it's just like the resentment and the problems start piling up, and it's just so hard to find your way back. And to be fair, not all couples do, because it takes certain steps, let's just say, to be able to reconnect. And some people don't want to do it. But I've had a few couples that were like really seriously on the edge of like ending things. So I feel very, very grateful that like, I got to be a part of this process. And what I have seen, so I've recently been working with a lot of couples who have little kids, like they just became parents, and it really changes the dynamic of the relationship. And so I've seen that this is a very challenging time. A lot of couples break up in this period. So I do end up actually coaching a lot of couples through that phase. And I think it's amazing because I'll tell you another thing. Like I love my work, but if you go deeper, something that really moves my heart is that by helping adults love each other in a healthy way, I am giving their child a healthy childhood. And that is actually so powerful to me. I've had a lot of pathologies in my childhood, and I think most of us can say something very like similar. It's like what was happening when we were kids. And when I still see this, it's like you see a couple, like a mom or a couple with a kid, and you can see that adults don't know how to love, and the poor child becomes, like a sponge for all of this. So for me, working with couples is really about this. So very happy when I get to work with young parents. But then very often it's just, things are not working and couples are wondering, like, should we break up or should we stay together? They just lost that. And they kind of just, okay, let's give it a try. Let's see if we can stay together, because they value what they've built. So that is definitely a common issue that I have. And I'll tell you, with men and women, for women, very often something comes down to some form of healing. There needs to be some healing done, because there is a lot of pain from different things that happened in the past that simply means that this woman is not able to fully open up. She's not able to fully trust, or she's not able to orgasm, because this can, show up in different ways. And then with men, and I wonder if that's something maybe that you've experienced or seen with your work and your podcast. But I do have a lot of men who feel quite lost how to be a man in our times. We know very well that the role of a man has changed. The way that man was needed in a society is not the same as it is now. And especially in relationships, a lot of men feel kind of confused. A lot of men get, this opposite messaging of how they should be treating a woman. Because like women say like, oh, like make a first move. But when you make a first move, then you're like harassing me. And so like men just don't know how to navigate it. And a lot of men just kind of like lean back and like, I'm just not going to do anything because I just don't want to, make a mistake. So I'm just going to not do anything. So I do guide a lot of men to like find their own understanding of what it means to be a man and how they want to be masculine, kind of forgetting what what society says and just focus on like internal definition of masculinity. And again, that's extremely rewarding. Like I had this one client who works in HR and he's a people's person. And he had like this feeling that I'm too feminine because I work in HR. And I'm like, well, okay, well, let's look at your definition of what femininity and masculinity is. So I really love that because like I get to work with incredible men who just don't feel confident because they feel that the way they are is not how a man should be. But actually they're incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredibly interesting, the piece about masculinity. And it's to me personally, and people are not going to like this and whatever, it's my show. So here we go. But I think personally, I've never subscribed to what any definition of what masculinity was. I had my programming from TV and, a shitty stepdad and all of that stuff, right? Where I thought, oh, you shouldn't cry in front of a woman ever. You shouldn't ever show weakness. And all of the key things were always kind of baked in, but I never was like, I should go into this pool hall and pick a fucking fight with Rodney because then I'll look cool. Like some, people, we always get like this notion that it's strength all the time. When in reality, I think what I sort of adopted was, true power is fucking silent. You know what I mean? And it only comes out when it needs to be. A lion isn't just running through the jungle, killing everything because it can. It's chill. He looks cool doing it, whatever. And when he's hungry, watch out. That's, to me, sort of how I started to operate. And I started to care less and less about what other people thought. And the more that I didn't give a shit what women thought, I didn't give a shit what men thought, I started to focus on myself and building myself up, whether that was like becoming a nightclub promoter and throwing parties, opening huge bars and restaurants and nightclubs, doing a podcast. Like all of that focus went to me. And when that happened, I think women then noticed, oh, this guy's on his own shit. Now I'm interested. And so for me, that's how my masculinity works. I know that's not for everyone. I know there's people that struggle with it or whatever, but I think, this idea that because there was a Me Too movement that you can't say hello and whatever, I think that's just a fucking excuse. And I think that people should grow up and realize that, listen, men have been causing problems for thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of years. There's been like bad behavior forever. And I think that if we're experiencing a teeny bit of a backlash and all of a sudden we want to call that woke, there's a bigger problem there. Like, I think that we need to, we need to accept the responsibility that men have been literally the problem for a very long time. And that's okay, because now it gives us a chance to turn it around and do our own thing. I hate this idea that we blame women. It's actually one of the reasons I started the podcast. Is like, I have four sisters, and my grandma and my mother were the two best people in my whole life. My dad's both of them, the real one and the fake one, were both absentee dickheads. And so to me, I think this idea that, let's blame women, or whatever, and not pay them as much, it's so fucking backwards. I think that if everyone would just shut the fuck up and take their ego out of it, that we'd be in a better place, That's what I think.
I'll say something interesting. I was some magazine reached out to me for like some expert comment, and it was like how to like make sure that your partner doesn't cheat on you, or like all the signs of cheating. And I actually said that one of the ways how you can be a bit more sure that your man will not cheat is if he was raised with a lot of women, if he was raised by a single mom, or if he had sisters. Because in fact, when you have that, you become more in tune and sensitive to what women need, and also the pain that they experience. Like when you see your little sister being harassed, right? When you see your mom being sexually objectified, like this, like, oh wow, okay, now I understand. So now because ultimately, like, I am personally not necessarily mad at men, because I think the point is that we have very different experiences of reality. It's very, very different, and we have to understand this. Like you live a very different life than I do, even if we're in the same situation. And it's about trying to understand. And so I think the more we come together and the more we're in each other's space, the more we can see, oh, this is what it's like for you, and this is what it's like for me, right? And like, oh, okay, yeah, it's like, well, yeah, it doesn't feel nice when someone does that, because I get to feel this. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know, I just like, it's this black and white. Yeah. It's like still we're fighting each other. And I see women who are so angry at men, and no matter what you do, it's always your fault. And there's zero willingness to understand a man's perspective. And I see also with men exactly attacking women. I'm like, I don't think we're in a better place now that we were 10 years ago. Yeah. It's just like some things that came to surface, but we freaking like, but I'll tell you what I'm missing. What I'm missing is actually education. So even if you look, I mean, I have an issue with this for a lot of things, because even if I think of like, the recent pandemic, did you see any like common education about being healthy? Because I haven't. And like here we had a great opportunity to teach people. And the same when the Me Too movement happened, I feel like we missed that part. Yeah. We talked about issues, but we didn't give a solution. And a lot of men were left exactly. So now I don't know what to do, so I'm just not going to do anything. And I feel like we missed an opportunity to teach, right? It's like, hey, try this. Like, let me explain more what was happening, instead of like, no, what you did is wrong. And a man still doesn't understand why it's wrong. He just knows it's wrong. Right. But it's hard to change behavior if we don't teach people and we don't explain things. So again, podcasts like yours, I think it's amazing because it gives different perspective to those situations. And I honestly have always so much respect for anyone who listens to this type of content and wants to learn, wants to listen to stories and expand their perception,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's people are turning to podcasts and it's my whole thing for the first 2 seasons, and now we're in season 3, was like, hey, just listen to the guest, don't listen to me, I'm no expert. Right. And I still sort of feel that way, and I have a weird relationship with, but all I can do is just be true, and everything I just said to you and to the audience about how I feel about this, that, and the other. That being said, I engaged in more than my fair share of bad behavior. I've cheated. I've gaslit. I've done all that stuff. Right. But that doesn't mean that now, or anyone who did that is automatically out. They suck. They can't be a part of the conversation, and we can't coexist in a way where men and women are both getting what they want by being honest. No, it just means that you realize, that was kind of shitty of me, and I accept that, and I take full responsibility, and now I want to move forward. That's all that means. And you're right. You would have thought in the pandemic, and I really thought it too. Like, I was like, wow, we're going to come out of this like so much better. We're going to fix the stuff that's broken. We're going to like want to do all these. None of that happened. It's like the biggest thing that happened was like, Target's having a 2-day sale. It's like louder in your eye, right in your eyeballs. And so what a missed opportunity, And so that's why people like you are a lot more important than even before the pandemic, because there is so much misinformation and so much anger and vitriol that I think, to be horny in 2024 doesn't mean that you're a bad person. I think that we should just learn to embrace more of all of it. So, I mean, how are you doing that? I mean, big question, right? I mean, you're helping people on a case by case basis, but you're also putting out content, right? So when you're making content, are you thinking, okay, I have this big responsibility? Are you just putting out like what you think and you're hoping that it resonates? I mean, what goes into like, because either way is right, you know?
Look, so I'll start with something that like is true. You do look at what people are listening to on all the platforms. Like, okay, this is the hot topic. Let me add my like thoughts on the topic. So I do sometimes try to pick these things up. I don't always talk about the things I would love to talk as much, because I would love to, like, for example, do a 1 hour live on YouTube where I talk about the gender roles, what happened to the gender roles, and whether we still need them, right? But that's very deep. And, you know, people who are often on social media, they're not looking for that. I think people who watch podcasts, they are interested in a deeper conversation. But oftentimes people just want like a bit of like some inspiration online. And so it's a bit of a balance of like understanding what people really want and what they will listen to. But in most cases, in my case, I'll have a conversation, like especially with my bestie, or something happens, and then it triggers me to think about certain things. And so I'm like, oh, I want to speak about this because I think it's important. And anytime I create a piece of content, I always feel like this is important. I feel like people are getting this wrong. I feel it's important. That's kind of, that's where I come from. So it's kind of interesting because sometimes I'll watch like a video that I don't know, like put up 3 years ago. And I'm just like, oh, let's see what I talked about back then. And then I watch them like, this is good. Yeah. So I sometimes forget about this. But I think there's a lot of like own thinking, you know, it's like, I love thinking. It sounds weird, but like, I love thinking and contemplating, analyzing things. Maybe if I was born a few, like, you know, centuries ago, I would be a philosopher, I guess. So maybe this is what I am. I'm like a sex philosopher. I wonder if this exists. But I love going deeper. Like I hate those like 5 steps too. And sometimes I do something similar, but I always go deeper. I always want to explain to people why something happens. Right? It's like you never fix your sex life by trying a new position. That's not the problem. It can add to the solution, but that is not the problem. And I think, yeah, for me, I love going deeper into like, you know, our psyche and explaining why we do certain things. Because when you understand it, this is when you can change this. Mm-hmm. So that's usually how, but the content is usually inspired by something in my life. And I'm like, this is so important. I need to speak about this.
Yeah, no, you can tell. I mean, it's great stuff. And I encourage everybody to go follow you and like all your videos and send you questions and talk about what they're experiencing too, because I do see that you're tackling things that I see every day in my feed or on my show, or, you know, friends of mine are experiencing all these same things. And so you hit all of the points pretty nicely. That being said, and we're here at the end of the episode. So what I want to do is, again, very easy walk through the park question. Take as much time as you need, but I gotta ask. So with the way things are now, with pushback, with sex, pushback with intimacy, pushback with you can't show these emotions, whether it's a man, a woman, someone who's non-binary, whomever listening, right? What would be one piece of sort of universal advice for a better sex life, a better emotional life, just a better existence? What would you give them from your very rich area of expertise?
For me, it's always the same. Close your eyes and go within. It's incredible how much we are focused on the external and how much the way we live is in reaction to the external stimulation. And we don't even feel ourselves. We don't understand what our body is telling us. When you feel pain, what do? You take a painkiller. Instead, what I would tell you is close your eyes, find which part of your body hurts, drop your awareness into that part and start talking to your pain and ask, why do you hurt? What's happening? Like, just the way you have relationships with other people, the way you talk to other people, do this to yourself. For me, that has been the biggest shift. Through that, I feel like I actually am in control of my life. You know, it's like, as a woman, I'll tell you even this, it's like, so just a few examples, right? So I have felt actually in the last few weeks or months, I felt something is off. Like I feel. And how do I know this? Because I eat more. My appetite goes up and I want to spend more time watching Netflix and I'm not as productive. And I'm like, okay, clearly something is off, right? So what do? I spend some time, you know, especially in the morning when I wake up and I'm in bed or when I go to bed, right? So it's like you're already lying down. You don't want to be doing anything else. And you your brain, like brain waves, they drop. So it's easier for you to access those, like your subconscious. And you just start asking, it's like, okay, so what's happening? What are we missing? You know? And I'll see, what is it about? I'm like, oh, I feel lonely or I'm missing this. It's like all of the answers are within us. We just have to be listening and sourcing. And you will never have a good relationship unless you know how to do that. Because inside of you, all of your needs exist. Your pleasure exists inside of you. Your boundaries exist inside of you. And if you don't start listening to yourself, you will always feel unfulfilled, unmet, anxious, sad, worry, etc. So for me, especially when something is off, like when you feel anxious, sad, stressed, always close your eyes and go within. And like if it's like a new practice for you guys, then the easiest thing is just identify that sensation that you have that feels off, see where it is in your body, drop your awareness to this part of your body and talk to that sensation. Or you can kind of project that sensation in front of you, and it can either be like a shape. You can turn it into a person, but then it's in front of you and you talk to this thing. Talk to the person, talk to the shape, you just talk to it. And at first, maybe you won't hear anything, but you do it a few times and you'll see that you start getting insights. That's how you connect to your subconscious to understand what you really need to live a good life. For me, that is something I wish everyone could do. Like, if you don't want to take any other tips and advice that I sure don't, start closing your eyes and talking to yourself.
Love it. Magda Kay, thank you so much for being here with me on Sex Party. I'd love to have you back because there's a ton of questions that we didn't even get to, as always. And in a good interview, you should never get to even half of your questions. That's my little rule I make up for good interviews. And so this was no exception. Let's tell these party goers where they can find you on social, where they can find you elsewhere, where they can work with you and just shell out tons of money on a better existence.
So you guys can just search for Magda Kay. It's MAGDA KAY. And there's one other Magda Kay online. She's a DJ.
Oh,
I'm not a DJ. So anything that's going to be not related to music is me.
Okay.
So you have my YouTube channel, Magda Kay. My Instagram is Magda Kay Official. My website, magdakay.com. I'm not on Twitter. I'm actually blocked on Twitter, but it's not even for sex. I don't know why. I just cannot access it.
God. Oh my God.
But I'm pretty much everywhere. I think YouTube and Instagram are the main platforms. Check my website to see more. If you guys would like to get some freebies or work with me, then you'll find everything on the website. And feel free to reach out, message me that you guys, watch this episode so I know where you're coming from. And yes, if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer.
Yeah, and we'll link a bunch of stuff for them to find you in the show notes or in the description on the video. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you in a second about bringing you back, but this was awesome, and thanks for being so honest about the sex cult, because we need honesty about these things, right? And that was one thing we haven't gone into yet. So I love that, and I think you had such profound advice that if people just take a second and actually think about what you said, that right there is a start to like a better sex practice, a better life practice, better breathing practice, for God's sake, so thank you so much. I appreciate it. Big thank you to my guest, Magda Kay, for being with me on the show. Go check out everything she is doing. Follow her on YouTube, follow her on Instagram, buy her book, work with her, right? She's clearly intelligent. She clearly has a lot of things to offer. Go work with Magda. If you're loving guests like Magda and you want to see more guests like her, she'll be back at some point in the future. If you're just enjoying Sex Party and you want to show some love, some appreciation, some desire for more, what can you do? Well, if you're listening to this on platforms like Apple and Spotify, you could leave a rating, you could leave a review. Those things are great and wonderful, and I do appreciate them. But fuck that. What you really want to do is you want to make sure you're subscribed, especially if you are subscribed or think you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts. They have been unsubscribing people for some weird reason. I'm sure it'll all resolve itself eventually. But until then, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Sex Party with Dustin Rybka, upper right-hand corner. You want to tap on the little circular icon and tap resubscribe, resume, upload, whatever it is to make sure you're subscribed. You should see a check mark there when it's done. That way you know. New episode every single Wednesday. You guys don't want to miss it. If you're watching on YouTube, should we start a sex party cult? Leave your answers in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, I love you. I see you. I appreciate you. If you guys want to show that same love, that same desire that the Apple and Spotify and audio people are showing, what can you do? Well, listen, you could like all of the videos. You could like this video. You could leave comments, right? Again, awesome. I love when you leave comments. I get to engage with you, and it's a great back and forth. But what you really want to do is make sure you're subscribed to this channel on YouTube so you never miss a new episode every single fucking Wednesday. I love you guys. I'm always available in the DMs on Instagram, and I will see you all right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at Sex Party FM. Follow Dustin at Dustin Rybka.